The spaceport city was busy. Ships came and went. People rushed through metal streets. Neon signs blinked in every language. Noise, smoke, light. Everything moved fast. And yet, no one looked up. Above the main road, tied to a giant billboard post, was a young alien girl. Her arms were stretched above her head. Ropes wrapped around her waist and ankles. A heavy metal board hung from her neck. It said, "On sale, half-breed, damaged, make offer." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her skin was pale purple, her hair tangled and dusty. One eye was swollen shut. Her lips were cracked. People passed by without even turning their heads. She had been up there for 2 days. No one cared. Then someone did. A man stopped. He wore a long brown coat, boots with dust on them, and a pack across his back. He had scars on his face and tired blue eyes. He was human. His name was Mason. He looked up at the girl. She looked down at him. For a second, she thought, maybe he's another buyer. Mason didn't say anything. He just stared for a long time. Then he stepped forward, toward the pole. "Hey," someone shouted, a guard at the corner. Fat, lazy, holding a cup of synth coffee. "She's not worth the trouble, human. Property of Threx Exports." Mason ignored him. He pulled a small tool from his coat, an old plasma cutter. The guard stood. "You can't take her, she's registered junk." Mason didn't stop. He began to cut the ropes. The crowd slowed. Some people stopped, not to help, just to watch. Another guard walked over laughing. "Look at this guy. Thinks he's some kind of hero." "Half-breed's not even worth feeding," said another. "Should have scrapped her." Mason finished cutting the last rope. The girl fell forward, but he caught her. She was light. Too light. Like she hadn't eaten in days. Her head rested against his chest. Her voice was dry, weak. "Are you here to buy me?" Mason looked down at her. "No," he said, "I'm here to carry you." He turned around and walked away. The guards didn't stop him. They didn't care. They had laughed too early, too loud. And now, the crowd was watching. Mason carried her down the road. No ship, no speeder, just his boots and his arms. She whispered again. "Why?" Mason didn't look down. Because no one else did. At the edge of the city, near a closed-down warehouse, Mason opened a hidden shelter door. Inside it was small but clean. Water, food packs, a cot. He laid her down gently. She curled up, shivering. He gave her a soft blanket. She looked at it, confused. "Do you want me to pay later?" He blinked, then said calmly, "No, you're not for sale." Her lips trembled. Tears rolled from her eyes. But she didn't sob. She had forgotten how. Later, Mason sat across from her, fixing a broken comm device. He didn't ask her questions. He just waited. Finally, she whispered, "My name was Lyra." He looked up and nodded. "Lyra, that's a good name." She blinked. Nobody had said her name like that before. Like it meant something. Outside, the city kept moving. Loud, fast, uncaring. But in that small room, a broken girl slept for the first time in peace, and the human who had once walked alone now had someone to protect. The next morning, Lyra woke to warmth. Not sunlight, blanket warmth, safe warmth. She blinked slowly, her bruised eye still half shut. The room was quiet. The floor was metal, but clean. A small heater hummed in the corner. She smelled something strange, real food. Then she remembered. The billboard, the rope, the human. She sat up fast, heart racing. Across the room, Mason was stirring a pot of soup over a small stove. He didn't look at her, just spoke in a calm voice. "It's not poisoned." She stared. "You saved me, but why am I still here?" He shrugged. "Where else would you go?" She didn't answer. Because the truth was, she had nowhere. Mason handed her a warm cup. Lyra held it carefully. She stared at the steam. You didn't buy me. You didn't use me. Are you going to sell me? Mason finally looked her in the eyes. You're not for sale. Those words felt heavier than the chains had. She took a sip of the soup. It was the first real food she'd had in weeks, maybe longer. Her hands trembled. A tear slipped from her eye, but she wiped it away fast. Mason stood and grabbed his gear. Rest, I'll be back soon. Lyra froze. You're leaving? He nodded. Just for supplies. Her voice cracked. What if someone comes back for me? He paused, then handed her a device. Emergency beacon. Press it, I'll know. He hesitated, then added, No one's going to hurt you again, Lyra. Hours passed. Lyra stayed inside. She didn't sleep. She kept the blanket wrapped around her like armor. Every noise made her jump. Every footstep outside made her reach for the emergency button. But no one came. And when Mason returned carrying food packs and a new blanket, she whispered, You came back? He looked surprised. Of course, but not everyone had forgotten her. Back in the city, someone had taken a picture, a photo of Mason cutting the ropes, holding her, walking away. That photo was now on the net, circulating, labeled, Human steals property from sale post, a merchant. Recognized her face. He had once tried to buy her cheap but was turned away. Now he saw a chance to make noise. He called the old owner, sent the location, demanded payment for the tip. The response came fast. Send men. That half-breed still has value to someone. Back in the shelter, Lyra was brushing her hair for the first time in months. Mason had given her an old comb. Her hands still shook. I don't know how to be normal, she whispered. Mason sat nearby, checking his gear. You don't have to be normal, he said. Just be safe. She looked at him. You don't talk much. He gave a small smile. Talking never saved anyone. Then they heard it. Boots, metal scraping, voices outside. Mason's face changed. Lyra backed into the corner, trembling. They found me, she whispered. Mason stood slowly, calm, focused. He walked to the door, opened it. 4 men stood there, armed, laughing. We're here for the girl, one said. Return the property and no one gets hurt. Mason stepped outside and closed the door behind him. She's not property. Not your call. It is now. One of the men reached for his weapon. Mason moved first. In a blur, he struck the man's hand, grabbed his shoulder, and threw him into the wall. Another lunged. Mason ducked, slammed his knee into the attacker's gut, and swept his legs. The third tried to pull a blaster, but Mason had already kicked it away and knocked him flat. The last man turned and ran. Inside, Lyra stood frozen. When Mason came back in, she stared at him like he was someone out of legend. You fought them. For me. He sat down again, breathing steady. Yeah. She stepped closer. You're not like the others. He looked at her. Neither are you. That night, Lyra didn't cry. She sat beside him, a blanket on her shoulders, her fingers still holding the emergency button, but she didn't press it anymore, because he was already there. The days passed slowly in the quiet shelter. Outside, the city roared with lights, ships, and greed. But inside, Mason's hidden place, time moved differently. There were no chains here. No signs, no price tags, just warm food, silence, and safety. Lyra sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. She watched Mason fix something, maybe a solar panel, maybe a broken filter. She didn't ask. She still wasn't sure if she was allowed to. That morning, Mason had brought her new clothes. Nothing fancy, just clean, soft, and warm. She hadn't touched them. Now the folded set sat beside her like a trap. Mason finally noticed. They won't hurt you. She looked up slowly. You want something for them? He blinked. No. Then, why? He met her eyes and said gently, because kindness isn't a trick. Lyra stared. She didn't understand. Later, Mason made soup again. He handed her a bowl. She held it carefully, then placed it on the floor beside her. I'm not hungry. He didn't force her. He just said, okay, and went back to his work. After 5 minutes, she picked it up again, sipped it, then finished all of it in silence. She hadn't eaten in peace since she was small. She couldn't even remember what peace felt like. That evening, she asked him softly, do you fix things? Mason nodded. I used to. Ships, drones, power grids, people sometimes. She looked down at her hands. Can you fix me? Mason paused, then replied, you're not broken. The words made her eyes sting. She turned away quickly. But something inside her had shifted, a crack in the wall, a light coming through. The next morning, Mason came back from the market with more supplies. He dropped a small pouch into her hands, dried, fruit candies. She blinked. These are for me? Only if you want them. She sniffed them. They smelled sweet. She looked up, confused. I don't remember ever getting something without a price. Mason tilted his head. Not everything good comes with a cost. She shook her head. Not where I come from. Then maybe it's time to come from somewhere new. That night, she stared at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her bruises were fading. Her skin had color again, and for the first time, she looked like someone real. Someone worth saving. The next day, something strange happened. Lyra laughed. Not loud. Not long. But real Mason was trying to fix a stubborn light panel, and it zapped him with a spark. He cursed under his breath, shaking his hand. Lyra covered her mouth, then let the laugh escape. He turned and looked at her. That the first time I've heard that? She looked down. I think... maybe yes. He smiled. Good. Let's hear it again sometime. But even as her body healed, her mind stayed on edge. She still flinched at loud sounds, still jumped when someone knocked at the door, and sometimes when she dreamed, she still saw herself tied to the sign, waiting to be bought. One night, she sat beside Mason by the small fire. Why didn't you walk past like everyone else? He didn't answer right away. Because I've walked past too many. I told myself the next time, I'd stop. You were the next time. Lyra stared at him. You didn't even know me. I do now. And? Mason looked her in the eyes. And you matter? She looked away. Not because she didn't believe him, but because deep down, she wanted to. And that terrified. Lyra sat by the fire, her arms wrapped around her legs. The room was warm, but her skin felt cold. Mason sat a few feet away, repairing an old sensor. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was something they had both learned to share. But tonight, Lyra spoke, softly, like she was lifting something heavy out of her chest. Do you want to know who left me there? Mason didn't look. Only if you want to tell me. Lyra's fingers gripped the edge of her blanket. She took a breath and began. My mother was from the Asera caste. High blood, powerful family. She was graceful, beautiful. I saw pictures once. She met a human trader, my father. No name, just stories. They fell in love. But on her world that wasn't allowed. Pure bloodlines only. Mason listened, quietly soldering wires. She ran away with him, had me. But when he disappeared during a cargo run, her family found her. They took her back. They said I was a stain. Lyra's voice cracked. She tried to keep me, but she wasn't strong enough. So they took me. Mason finally looked at her. How old were you? 4, maybe 5. What happened after that? They gave me to a school, really just a training camp for servants. Said I'd pay off my shame by working. I cleaned floors, scrubbed air vents, cooked for people who never said my name. She looked away. Then I got older, and they found other uses for me. Mason's hands paused. Lyra's voice shook, but she kept going. When I got too thin, too quiet, they called me defective. So they tied me up on the billboard, said if anyone wanted me, they could take me. If not, the sun would finish the job. Silence. Only the sound of the fire remained. Then Mason stood. He walked over, sat beside her, and gently said, "They're wrong, Lyra. Every single one of them." She didn't look at him. I believed them for years. But now, she finally turned her head, met his eyes. "Now I'm not sure what I believe anymore." Mason nodded. "Then let's start there. Believe this. You don't belong to anyone. And you're not a mistake." Lyra felt her throat tighten, but the tears didn't fall. Not yet, because now they weren't tears of pain. They were hope, trying to break free. Later that night, Lyra stood in front of the cracked mirror. She looked at her reflection. Still a little, bruised, still scarred, but standing tall, alive. She whispered to herself, "I'm still here." Meanwhile, Mason was scanning the comm channels. A ping caught his eye, a data tag tied to Lyra's old listing. Someone had posted a message. "If anyone sees the half-breed again, alert Theron Lux, high reward, immediate pickup." Mason's jaw clenched. Theron Lux. That was the man who signed the tag on Lyra's neck. He wasn't done hunting her. The next morning, Lyra stepped outside the shelter for the first time. She looked at the horizon, dusty, bright, endless. Mason joined her. "You ready to leave this place soon?" Lyra nodded. "Not to run," she said. "To stand." Mason smiled. Good, because he knew the past was cruel, but the future was watching now. 3 days later they came. It started with a shadow. Lyra was standing near the garden Mason had helped her build. Just a row of recycled planters and old water tubes. But to her, it was the first thing she had ever planted with her own hands. Then, she felt it. The sky darkened. A ship hovered above the canyon. Sleek, silver, loud. Not a cargo ship. Not a trader. This was a hunter-class private skimmer. Mason ran out of the shelter, his rifle already charged. He looked at the markings on the ship's hull and his jaw tightened. They found us. The ship landed hard, dust blasting everywhere. A ramp dropped. 4 guards walked out in black armor. Behind them came a tall alien male with gray skin, yellow eyes, and gold rings on his arms. He smiled like poison. Theron Lux. He stepped forward slowly, looked around with bored eyes, then saw her. Lyra stood still, back straight. No rope this time, no sign on her neck, but the fear in her eyes flickered, and that flicker made Theron grin. "Well," he said, "look at the pretty thing pretending to be free." Mason stepped between them, gun ready. "Turn around. You're not taking her." Theron raised a hand lazily. His guards lifted their rifles. "She's mine," he said. "Check the records. Registered property. Transferred to me through noble decree." Mason didn't blink. "She's a person, and I don't care what planet says otherwise." Lyra's heart pounded. Her legs wanted to run, but she didn't move. She looked at Theron, and something inside her rose like fire. "You left me tied to a billboard," Theron smirked. "You were useless." "Then why are you here now?" "Because you went viral, little stain, and stains on noble names must be erased." A camera drone floated in behind Theron. It was recording everything, broadcasting live. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Say that again," she said loudly. Theron looked confused. "What?" She stepped forward now, past Mason. "Say it again," she said. "Tell the galaxy what you called me." He laughed. "You're a half-breed, a defect, a reminder of why mixing with humans ruins bloodlines." Mason smiled slightly. Lyra was shaking, but her voice was steel. She turned to the camera. My name is Lyra. I was sold, shamed, left to die. This man, Theron Lux, tied me to a post like a broken toy. But I survived. A human rescued me, not for a price, not for power, just because I cried. I belong to no one. And I choose my name. Theron raised his hand in rage. Shut that drone down. But it was too late. The message was already live, already viral. People were watching across 3 systems. Mason stepped forward, gun steady. I told you to leave. Theron's guards hesitated. Orders were one thing. Millions of witnesses were another. Lyra stepped beside Mason. If you take me, I'll scream again, and this time the galaxy won't stop. Watching, Theron clenched his fists, then growled. You'll regret this. He turned, stormed back to his ship. His guards followed, and the skimmer lifted into the sky. Gone. Lyra dropped to her knees, but not from fear, from relief. Mason put a hand on her shoulder. You did that. You stood. She looked up at him. Tears in her eyes. I was so scared. He nodded. Me too. But you still stood. The galaxy now knew her name, and the girl who once had a metal sign around her neck had just spoken loudly enough for the stars to hear. Lyra sat in silence, watching the holographic feed flicker. Her face, her real face, now filled every screen from back-alley market stalls to royal courtyards. The video had spread faster than anyone expected, faster than Mason thought possible. It had reached mining moons, trade hubs, news channels, and rebel networks. It had reached the forgotten. It had reached the silenced. It had reached the sold. Across the galaxy, beings with scars on their backs whispered her name. Lyra. Some had never spoken up. Some had tried and been punished. But now, they had seen one girl who stood on shaking legs and told her owner no. They saw her speak into a drone and say, I choose my name. And something deep inside them woke up. Mason watched Lyra as she sat beside the small transmitter. Her eyes were wide, but not with fear, with something new. Purpose. They want to speak to you, he said softly. Lyra looked up. Who? All of them. Messages poured in, some were short. Thank you. I thought I was alone. You said what I couldn't. Others were desperate. They still have my sister. Help us. How did you get free? And one was simple. Are you real? Lyra pressed her hand to her chest. Yes, she whispered. I'm real. Soon, an independent news crew arrived. No weapons, no scripts, just a camera and a mic. Lyra agreed to speak, but only with Mason beside her. They sat on a simple bench outside the shelter. The wind carried dust across the rocks. There were no lights, no makeup, no perfect clothes, just truth. The reporter asked, Why do you think people listen to you? Lyra's answer was quiet. Because no one ever did before. Because I didn't shout to be famous. I shouted to live. The reporter nodded. Why did you call the human your rescuer? Lyra smiled slightly and looked at Mason. He didn't ask who I belonged to. He didn't ask what I cost. He just heard me. And stayed. The interview spread even faster than the drone video. Now governments reacted. Alien councils debated caste rules. Old slave codes were re-examined. Some denied the truth, but others opened their doors. Lyra soon received a request, an invitation to speak at the first Interworld Child Rights Assembly, a place she never imagined going. Mason looked at her as the message blinked on the screen. What do you think? She stared at it. I'm scared. That's okay. But I think I should go. They traveled quietly. No luxury ships, no banners, just them. When they arrived, the hall was full. Hundreds of species, reporters, guards, survivors, leaders. Mason waited behind the curtain. Lyra stood alone on the stage. She took a breath, then stepped forward, Her voice, clear and soft, rang through the hall. I was tied to a sign, left to be bought or to die. And no one stopped, except a human. She looked at them all. Some frowned, some nodded. Many just listened. He didn't save me with weapons or gold. He saved me by stopping, by treating me like a person. That shouldn't be rare. When she finished, the room stayed quiet. Then someone stood, clapped once, then again, and slowly. The room joined. Species that never agreed before clapped together. For her. Back on the ship, Mason handed her a data pad. You're a symbol now. She shook her head. I don't want to be a symbol. What do you want to be? She smiled. Just someone who was seen. The hall was silent as the last speaker stepped off the stage. Lights dimmed. One more name remained on the list, a name once forgotten, now written across ships, stories, datapads, and dreams. Lyra. Backstage, she stood alone, staring at the glowing sign behind the curtain. Unity Summit. Voices of the Forgotten. She touched her chest. Underneath the smooth dress, simple soft gray, stitched by a survivor colony, she wore the old collar she had been found in, not because she belonged to it, because she defeated it. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Nervous? Mason asked. He stood behind her in a clean jacket, his hair rough from travel, his eyes steady. She turned and nodded. More than I've ever been. He smiled. You've spoken to the galaxy already? Yes, but this is different. Why? She looked down, then up. Because now, I speak for myself, not as a victim, not as a message, just me. He stepped closer, placed his hand over hers. Then just be Lyra. The one who isn't for sale. The stage lights warmed. The curtain opened. And Lyra stepped into a world that once sold her. Now, it listened. She spoke simply. No script, no broadcast team behind her, only truth. I was born with mixed blood, alien mother, human father. I was called impure, cast out, sold, tied to a billboard, and left to die. People passed me, looked away. Until one didn't. He didn't offer money, he didn't ask questions, he just cut the ropes. She paused, looked around the great room filled with hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds. Her voice became softer. At first I thought he would hurt me, because kindness felt like a lie. But every day, he gave, without asking. Every day he taught me I was more than a product. He gave me my name. Lyra reached into her pocket. She pulled out the old metal tag, rusted, sharp-edged with the word, on sale, still burned into it. She held it up high. This was me once. Then she dropped it to the floor. The sound echoed like thunder in the quiet chamber. And I say this now to every child, every voice, every scarred soul who has been told they are less. You are not a number. You are not for sale. You are forever your own. The room stood, not clapped, not cheered, just stood, in silence, because they knew. Some truths are not entertainment. They are awakening. Later, Lyra sat outside under a glass dome. Stars glittered above her. Mason walked up with 2 mugs. Didn't think you'd ever step on a stage again, he said. Me neither, she replied, sipping slowly. But I'm glad I did. They sat together, quiet, safe, and full. After a while, Mason cleared his throat. There's something I've been thinking about. What is it? He pulled a small box from his pocket. Lyra's heart skipped. This isn't a rescue. He opened it. Inside was a simple ring, silver, with her name engraved inside. It's a choice. I don't want to be the man who saved you. I want to be the one you build the rest of your life with. Lyra's hands trembled, but not from fear, from joy too big to hold in. She didn't speak, She just nodded and held out her hand. He slid the ring onto her finger. Her voice cracked as she said, "Not for sale, but forever yours." The next day, a new billboard went up in the city where it all began. Not paid for by companies, not requested by the council, but raised by survivors, built by hands once scarred, carved in 20 languages. The sign showed Lyra's face, not tied, not crying, but smiling, free. The words below her read, "Not for sale, not yours to break, not afraid, forever free." People stopped to look. Some bowed, some cried, others walked by without understanding, but none forgot, because one human had stopped, because one girl had stood, and because the galaxy had finally listened.